My name is Courtney Wood. I'm the Economic Development Director for the Downtown Stockton Alliance, which is a 501c6 nonprofit property-based business improvement district serving downtown Stockton. This webinar series is intended to connect our business owners, property owners, and visitors with the organizations, resources, and people who can help them address issues which are of top concern to them. Today, we have a special guest, Carrie Wright. She is the Economic Development Director at the City of Stockton. So she's here to talk with us about everything going on with small businesses, with economic development in the city and also in downtown. I'm very happy to have her here today. We'll begin by having her go ahead and introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her role at the City of Stockton as the Economic Development Director. Then I will go ahead and ask her a list of questions I've outlined for her. And at the end, I will go ahead and open it up to the viewers to ask your questions. And with that, I would like to say, welcome. Welcome, Carrie. Thanks so much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at the City of Stockton.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today. A little bit about me. Grew up in Yolo County. First woman in my family to go to college. Worked had a small business right out of college. I wouldn't recommend it. Go make your mistake somewhere else. That was for about 10 years. Got into trade association management, was lucky enough to be appointed by the governor to the California Exposition and State Fair, and then made my way to Stockton. Very excited to be in Stockton. Came down and visited quite a bit as I was looking into the position. And frankly, downtown is one of the things that sold me on the job. I thought it was a great location, very historic, lots of opportunity. So I've been in the role for about almost 2 years, July 1st. I was here about 7 months when the pandemic hit. So been doing a lot the last 2 years. It's been a little bit of a wild ride, but excited to be here.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're so happy to have you as the Economic Development Director. And now I would like to just start diving in.
Sure, sounds good.
How would you define economic development and the overarching goal or purpose of your department at the city?
Sure. Well, economic development, it's one of those things where if you're not in city government, you're not directly involved in economic development, you can't always answer the question as a layperson, what does that really mean? And I like to think of it as being kind of the pivotal part of what a city does to ensure their future success. We are in charge of attracting businesses, which equates to jobs, retaining businesses so we don't lose the jobs that we have, making sure that those jobs are living wage jobs are higher, hopefully, and really providing the base and the foundation for others to be successful in business. It's a little bit different in Stockton, and that the Economic Development Department also oversees housing and homelessness and venues and parking. So we like to say pretty much anything that you do in the city, whether you come downtown for an event, whether you pay for parking, thank you very much. I know that's controversial for some. Whether you have a business, own a business, live in a house, or frankly, not living in a house and homeless, all of those things touch the Economic Development Department here in the city of Stockton. We have about 22 people working in the department. 3 of them are parking enforcement officers, and the rest are diligently working on the 3 areas, and including real property as well. So anything that the city owns, managing that property. So that's kind of a very diverse department, but all those things are connected, right? The business owners care a lot about parking, so and how that impacts their business. We want to bring in businesses that have jobs that pay high enough so that people can afford housing. So everything ends up being connected. So I really like the diversity of the department.
Yes, those are very different divisions, but they are all related. And I love what you said about ensuring success for the city. That's awesome. So with all of the hats that you wear, controlling all of these departments from homelessness to parking, what is a common misconception about the Economic Development Department, or maybe something that you just think people would be surprised to know?
I think a common misperception is that we only do economic development. So when I first got here, going around and talking to everyone, I think people were surprised to hear about the housing and homelessness piece and the parking and venues. I think a common misconception is people believe we're not doing anything on homelessness, where we're doing quite a bit on homelessness. I think the common misperception is that we're sometimes unapproachable, that they can't find the resources they need. And that's something that's really important to me, is people understanding how to access help, programs, advice, and what the city has to offer.
Okay. And I'm sure you get tons and tons of questions, but if you had to narrow it down to maybe the top question or the top few questions, what are those questions that you're getting and how do you answer them? The most common questions.
Yeah, I think, one of the most common questions is, why is development so hard? And so it ends up being process related questions, like, how can I do this? How can I do that? And how do I navigate all of these regulations? And those regulations are there for a reason. And a lot of them do make sense. A lot of them are there to protect our residents' lives and their safety measures, but they can also be onerous. And so if you have someone that has not done a lot of development in their life, it's hard. It's not an easy process to go through the development. Really excited that we have, I don't know that we can call him new anymore. Will Smith, Will Smith, I don't know why I said that. Will Crew is our community development director. And he's been with us for about a year. He's working on making the process a little bit more customer friendly, forward facing, reducing time that it takes to get permits. So I think those are those are really the biggest questions. How do I get around some of the regulations? That's a common question. Like, we don't really want to do that. We want to do this. And our goal is to find, a way and a path to yes. We want you to be successful in your business. We're not here to try and smother the business. It doesn't make any sense for us to do that. So we want to look at what the spirit of the regulations are, make sure everyone's safe, make sure that we're complying. There's a lot of layers of regulation. It's just not the city, there's state, there's federal, there's all kinds of regulations. So I think that's probably the most common question. And then outside of that, it does usually come to homeless. What are you doing about homelessness? Why aren't you doing more? And I would say homelessness is one of the issues that impacts multiple departments. And when I say homelessness is part of, housing and homelessness is part of economic development, that's the part where we get some funding to help with the homelessness issues. But multiple departments in the city are responsible for a piece of the homelessness, whether it's cleanup, whether it's safety, what have you. A lot of people are working on homelessness in the city.
And so I guess if they did come to your department and ask you about homelessness, what role would you say that your department plays in that?
So one of the things that I think we've identified as being so important is collaboration, and that there's a wider group, the continuum of care, that is really working toward ending homelessness, and they're putting the people first. So I think participation in the organizations that are already doing good work. So I have a board seat, I have staff are on committees. So we're showing up and we're participating. I would argue that we're being a leader in that we helped build and put together the homeless strategic plan, which was the very first regional homeless strategic plan that's been approved by the COC, the city, the county, and all the cities in the county. So that's a good step. But now that we've got a plan, how are we going to, how are we going to actually accomplish the plan? It's great to have a plan, but what are the next steps? So I would say from our department's standpoint, we show up, we participate in the larger conversations around the COC and with our community partners and those that serve the homeless. The other role is that any funding that becomes available through the state and the federal government, we try and be the first in line and make sure that we're capturing as many resources as possible to then get out to the community. And that becomes kind of our central role, is bringing the funds in, creating a process where we understand where the funds would be most beneficial, distributing those funds, and then making sure that what, we were told was going to be done with those funds gets done, and then reporting that back up to the state or the feds so that hopefully we can bring in more resources.
And would you say like the ESG and CDBG funding falls into that category?
So ESG and CDBG funding, which the recommendations for next year were just approved by council last night. A portion of that is used for homelessness and housing. ESG especially is homelessness. CDBG is, for those who don't know, the Community Development Block Grant. Stockton is what is known as an entitlement city, which means we get an annual allocation every year for that amount of funding. And it's the most flexible funding. It's the longest running funding the city has had. It's probably also the most heavily regulated because it has been in existence for so long. It can be used for economic development, which we use a large portion for economic development and many of the programs that we have. But it can also be used for housing and homelessness.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for helping us answer those common questions. And I have another question for you. This is about resources and programs in general. I know that you guys have so many programs and resources for businesses, property owners, and residents, but could you maybe touch on some of the key resources that your department has to offer?
Sure. So we have, a lot of economic development programs that are funded through CDBG, Community Development Block Grant funding. And then we also have what I would call resources that are more static. We've put them up and people can take advantage of them and they're not an ongoing cost. So a couple of the programs that I like are the Stocked Full of Produce. That is a grant that allows store owners to bring in fresh produce. We help fund that. We have the Storefront Beautification Micro Grant, which is a really nice small grant for those that need to kind of spruce up the front of their storefront. Relatively low, difficulty in accessing those funds. Then we have a facade program, excuse me, the commercial facade program, which we match funds if a property owner wants to invest in their storefront and kind of really bring up the building to the next level. We match funds and help them because, we have a vested interest in those businesses looking good, being able to better serve their customers. So those are a couple of the programs. We've launched a lot of programs this past year with COVID-related funds, everything from business grants. And, to me, this is tied to success is the emergency rental assistance program. We did a community support fund. We did an essential support fund. We did Project Home Key. So there is a lot of very specific pandemic related dollars that have gone out into the community through a variety of means. And we've set up all of those programs in, the last year as our regular programs continue.
Yes, you guys have been extremely busy, I know, in the past year. And you've done some awesome work around the pandemic. So let's go into that topic. Okay. So I know that last year was really busy for you guys, and you just mentioned so many programs that you launched. How has the pandemic changed things for economic development operationally? And what other kind of responses to the pandemic has your department had?
Well, operationally, I would say everybody's working more. I mean, that's just the simple fact is that we know that we have a short amount of time to really make a difference. And there were deadlines associated with some of the funding that we received. So it was use it or lose it. So our mission, really became, let's get these dollars out to the community as soon as possible. And in order to be successful, I would like to really thank the business coalition that we've put together basically in the first weeks of the pandemic, bringing together all of the chambers, Downtown Stockton Alliance, Miracle Mile, all of those groups that represent businesses as a touch point, really saying what is now needed, what's the next thing that we need to do, what is everyone else doing so we don't do that. So it was a matter of connecting those dollars and creating partners. The DSA was a great partner in getting patios installed in the downtown area. You guys were a great partner when we called on organizations to distribute PPE. We knew we couldn't get to every individual, within the city, but we knew we could get to 25 to 30 organizations and get the PPE out. So I think one of the most important things that we've been able to do from an operational standpoint is connect ourselves to partners that know how to get things done, and get the resources into their hands and kind of trust in their ability to get it out to those who need it the most. And that's really been working. And, you know, the pandemic, I think, has, I used to be a business owner. You make decisions, you do things. It's a little bit harder for me in city government. It's my first city government role. Things can move a little bit slower because there are reasons for that. There's accountability. There's a elected body. You want to make sure that you're making the right decisions. I would say in the pandemic, we've been able to push the accelerator on getting things done, and staying flexible, nimble, and pivoting when necessary. I mean, you know, we're launching programs that were not all the way built. You're building the plane as you're flying the plane. That's not the best place to be in, but it allows you to adjust. And that's what we've done. And every time we've launched a program, it's better, it's quicker, it's faster, and it's helping more people. And that in the end is, you know, where we stay focused as a department and frankly, as a city. How are we helping the residents? Period. That's how can we help the residents, whether you're a business owner, whether you're homeless, whether you're trying to hang on to your house, whatever it is, how can we help them and get the funds into their hands?
I totally agree that you guys have been extremely nimble, and we love working with you. So
Thanks.
we're looking forward to future collaboration.
Good. Yay, us too.
I would like to ask about the CARES Act funding to see, you know, how were those funds allocated? I know you guys ran several programs like you were talking about for residents. Also, there was the business grant programs that you were running.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of feel for how many businesses benefited from the CARES Act funding?
Sure. So there's been several waves of funding, some smaller, some larger. There was early on, even the city council, I think one of the first cities, my understanding is to dedicate some general fund dollars to get out to certain segments, including businesses. Then there was something called SB 89, which is, you know, was about $1 million to the city, and it can be used in certain ways. And then the big kind of tranche of funding came with the CARES Act. And that was $27 million. It was approved by council last July, and we had to spend the funds by the end of December. So every department pitched in. We had daily meetings with all directors to figure out the best way. And again, that staying nimble, and not everything that we wanted to do worked out, but there are some things that we didn't know we wanted to do in the beginning that were huge successes. So again, it was that nimbleness. The Economic Development Department was responsible for about 16 million of the 27 million. And it was divided into several different categories. Rental and mortgage assistance was the biggest chunk of that. But we also did a shelter health and safety program for 1.5 million with United Way. And they, again, using our partners and having that partner take that 1.5 million and figure out, along with us, where that was best going to go among the different shelters. Additional funds went out for the community support fund. We knew that we didn't hit everything with and the rental mortgage, so we launched a community support fund, which was more than $3 million, that basically said, how have you been affected? How can how do you need this money to help you with COVID related expenses? And basically anything that came in, you know, how can we tie it to COVID? How can we help these organizations, nonprofits, et cetera? And that's where I saw, you know, really creative solutions and ideas, things that we didn't realize were problems or issues. I think we had over 50 organizations, maybe it was 49 organizations that we contracted with. Also, I mean, we tripled the number of contracts that we did in the last year. And for many, it was the first time they'd interacted with the city government, right? It was the first time they got funds. So to me, that was a success all on its own. But in terms of businesses, we know that our grants themselves, which we kept very simple, $3,000 grants. We did, I think, 3 waves of the grants, well over 1,000 businesses that we supported. But the support came in other ways as well, in working with the DSA and Miracle Mile in terms of support for restaurants and outdoor patios, PPE distribution, all those other things. So I can't really tell you. I know it's thousands. We track the grants very closely, and if I dig into records, I could find probably the exact number. But everything that, again, it was how can we help the most with what we've got.
Awesome. You guys have done great, amazing work in the last year.
Thanks.
I would like to ask one more question about this, just because I have had some businesses, reach out and ask me. So do you think that there will be any more COVID-19 funding coming through the city?
So there, the big thing to look at is the American Rescue Plan, which has a lot of components, which I think everyone's still trying to figure out. There's a direct allocation to cities, but that's not all there is. So components of that include the restaurant revitalization grant, which is not something we run, that's being run through SBA. So there's lots of different components. We did get a tranche of CDBG funding, which we're still waiting on HUD to approve. Once that is approved, we will be launching an artist support, nonprofit support groups grant. We'll be launching a cottage industry grant, and something with urban farmers as well. So it's like we've got these little waves. So yes, there's more support coming. I don't know exactly all of the details of what that looks like with the American Rescue Plan. I'm not sure anybody knows exactly what that looks like. But supporting our venues getting back up and running. We had opening night for baseball last night. It's great to see our venue being used even in that limited capacity. So we want to, we'll be looking at the ways that we can provide anchor support and foundation for our business centers, because the small businesses are really the hardest Stockton. That's all there is to it. So we're looking at every opportunity, and as soon as we have it, we'll let you guys know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Yeah.
So I would like to shift a little bit, and I would like to ask about when you first went into this role, what priorities had you set for your department, and how has that kind of changed or pivoted during your time in the position? Now that you're kind of used to it, you've been through a lot of things. What changes do you have in terms of your priorities?
So I think coming into Stockton and not having lived here, it was really important for me personally, for my own personal goals, is to really get to know the community. So I spent, frankly, until the pandemic hit, really going out into community and meeting with business owners, organizations. I think I might have spent more time out of the office than in the office, really just trying to understand the needs of the community. That's always going to be a priority for me in terms of community outreach and understanding how best to serve our residents with the tools that we have. I think, priorities in terms of shifted with the pandemic, and it became not about getting out and talking to people, but about, still listening, but doing that through the Business Coalition for the business side of things, and then really prioritizing how best to get funds out and support out. And so a lot of things that, we would have liked to do, a lot of things that were on the docket were things that we wanted to revamp or tweak, and our regular programs have kind of been put off to the side as we focused on COVID, which makes sense. And I think now, we're kind of in a new reality. We don't exactly know what everything's going to be in, but we've been in a sprint for a year. So a little bit of focus on making sure my team is holding up, that they can take some time off, that we can shift from sprint to marathon a little bit more, because we do have more funding coming in, and it feels right now like a little bit of a never-ending wave, which is good because we want to get it out to the community. But my highest priority will always be being responsive to community needs and making sure that we're listening, that we're providing access, and that our programs are designed in response to the needs. And we've been able to do that with the COVID-related programs, and we are starting to really look at kind of those traditional programs to see what are some barriers. where are we doing our outreach? Where should we be doing our outreach? What are we missing? So I think that was kind of a scattered answer, but
No, it made perfect sense. Um, I love your dedication to serving what the community needs now.
yeah.
It shows that you are flexible and willing to evolve with whatever our community actually needs.
Yeah.
So awesome. Okay, my next question is about downtown specifically. So, what opportunities and challenges do you see for our downtown area?
Sure. So downtown, to me, any downtown is kind of the heart of the city. And if the heart of your city is healthy, then it kind of extends to the rest of the city. Just, I don't know if it's mentally, I don't know if it's a mindset. I don't exactly know the reasoning for it, but that's how I view the downtown is if the downtown's healthy, that's really going to be helpful for the future success of Stockton as a whole. So we're doing a couple of things. Last year, we had our first ever virtual investor summit, which was supposed to be in person. It was tweaked because of the pandemic. And it was really about telling our story and what are the opportunities in Stockton. So that worked out really well. It was invite only. We had, I think, about 50 people registered or so. This year, we're partnering with Visit Stockton and Accelerator for America, who provided some funding. And we're doing a virtual summit focused on downtown. So that registration is launched today. So you can go to stocktoninvest.com. We're inviting everyone for June 24th to hear from city leadership, to hear from the DSA, to hear from many different groups about all the different opportunities happening in Stockton. Just a couple of things as a preview. To me, Stockton, so many historic buildings, there's a lot of infrastructure that's aged. There's challenges, right? But with challenges, there's also a lot of great opportunities. So we have a couple things going on that you'll hear more about at the Investor Summit, which is the Minor Street improvements, which is under construction now. So if you've had a hard time getting across Minor Street, just know that that's all an effort for improvements. And I think that's going to be a huge improvement to the downtown area. When you look at Weber, we want Minor to look like Weber in the sense of just kind of completion and sophistication. So really transforming that whole thoroughfare. We are moving City Hall. That's in process and on track, even staying on track during COVID. So that's going to be down on the west side of Weber, right on the waterfront. And there's some development happening in there where Stockton Unified School District is looking at their headquarters being in that area. So really doing a lot in terms of kind of our own projects with the city. But what I've been hearing and seeing is the massive amount of transactions for and sale of property, investors coming in and taking a look. So busier than what I've been told, busier than we've been in more than 25 years. So very strange kind of space in the pandemic, lots of people affected, and yet real estate is kind of going crazy. So a lot of great things. We want to tell you all about it. We want to tell you how you can access city resources, how to navigate government to make that easier, and some of the opportunities. So that's, I think I might have kind of gotten stuck on Investor Summit because that's what I'm so excited about.
It's exciting.
But we also just concluded Small Business Week. And we have some entrepreneurship dollars that were approved last night by council in terms of grants. So that's nice that that's continuing. And then we're going to stay focused on opening our venues. We know that if we can get people downtown in a safe way, back into the Bob Hope and the Bob Hope Open, our arena open, that's going to help with the downtown space as well. And then there's some small funding for additional outdoor patios. So if people missed the first round on the outdoor patios, there's a little bit of opportunity there as well. So lots happening.
Awesome. Yeah, those are some great changes and opportunities for downtown. I can't wait for the venues to be opened up and for people to come back as visitors.
Yeah.
So I would like to now move into a topic of parking, which you mentioned earlier. And it's a top concern always for downtown businesses and also for just visitors coming to hopefully patronize our businesses. Do you have any upcoming modifications planned for the parking layout of downtown, or just anything we should be aware of in terms of transitions when it comes to downtown parking?
Yeah, sure. So, first comment on parking, and this won't be a popular comment. Coming into Stockton, this is the 13th largest city in California. And I was a little bit shocked about how much resistance there is to paying for parking. That's pretty normal. I grew up in Sacramento. Anytime you go into downtown, Sacramento, you pay for parking. So that was a little bit surprising to me, to be honest. It's like, okay, that's a way anyway. But that's okay. I understand, Stockton residents, it can be a barrier for businesses, and we want to be cognizant of that. So a couple of different things that Tina is working on, who oversees our venues and parking, which I'm very excited about. We were able to procure some funds to invest in elevator upgrades. One of the things I think the city has gone through in the last 10 years is really being cognizant of budget, trying to be very careful.
Mhm.
So we went through last year and onboarded a new parking vendor. So Laz Parking is our partner, and I'm excited about that. That happened in May, right after pandemic hit. So I think they've been in transition mode. But the two things are, we're doing an elevator assessment that's happening shortly, and then all the upgrades to the elevator. So that's not something you see, on the outside. It's making sure that everything is running properly, being responsible in our maintenance and all that kind of good stuff. So not fun and not sexy in any way, but needed. The second piece is upgrading the technology, basically at the entrance and exits of all of the parking garages. They call it a revenue control system, and that we can better track what's going on in the parking garages, but it also allows for people to exit more easily, pay more easily, and have a better experience.
Oh, wow.
So I'm looking forward to bringing us up into the new century with our parking technology. And I think that's some signage. That's been underway for a while, some hangups there, but making things more clear. I know some of the garages have some signage issues in terms of monthly parkers versus non-monthly parkers. So we're just trying to make that more clear, and Tina's got that underway as well.
Awesome. Do you have any kind of time frame for when we could expect these modifications to be complete?
The signage should be relatively shortly. The elevator is going to take some time because we're doing the assessment. So I would say you should be able to see something in the next year. That'll be a
Okay,
focus for the next fiscal year.
amazing. So now I'd like to ask about the future. I would like to see, you kind of shared already some upcoming downtown development projects. Are there any others that you might be able to talk about in terms of, new development coming to downtown? I know we have Grandview Village coming and some other projects, but what can you share with the viewers?
We do have quite a bit of housing projects, which I didn't touch on earlier. Grandview Village is under construction, and we have several other adaptive reuse projects that are happening. A couple of them on Main Street, which is really exciting. Things did get impacted by COVID, so there are some things that have stalled out, some things that are getting started again. We do have several properties that are in play right now in terms of being sold to different entities, which I couldn't talk about. But to me, a lot of exciting things happening in that space. And we've had several groups move in to the downtown area, which you guys know very well, which is bringing, workforce down here, which is helpful to businesses and that type of thing. I believe and one of the things that we need to be doing, or two things we need to be doing to really move the dial in downtown. One is getting people to live here, which I'm excited about that possibility, given some of the projects we have underway. And then the second is, placemaking, giving people a reason to come to downtown or stay in downtown. We have thousands of people working in downtown. And so what are the things that we can do as a city or partnering with DSA to make sure that people are interested in continuing to stay if they've worked all day, or come down on the evenings and weekends. I think Jazz in the Plaza is a good example of a small effort that is trying to get people to come down here. We do have to do a better job of telling our story. You know, you'll hear from people, oh, it's dangerous to be in downtown. It's like, when was the last time they've been in downtown? That's always the first question I ask. And, you know, coming from outside of Stockton, I don't see downtown Stockton as being a dangerous space in any way. You know, I often walk between my office and City Hall. In the evenings, I've walked over to events. You know, obviously things can happen, but they can happen anywhere.
Mhm.
So I think part of it is just overcoming some of the thought process behind downtown, and then making it as easy as possible for people to park and access the events while still paying for
Definitely.
parking. Let's be clear.
True. Need the parking revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now I'd like to ask about your department and what can we expect from economic development in the next year on the city side of things? What's upcoming?
Sure. So, you know, one of the tools I didn't mention earlier that we launched this past year is Size Up, which is a way of evaluating kind of the business atmosphere. If you're thinking of opening a business or expanding a business, you can take a look at a lot of data to help you decide, you know, what is the risk, what is the benefit, what is you know, what's the best course forward. So that's a tool. Advantage Stockton is also a tool that has a ton of resources. We've moved a lot of our programs online. So I didn't mention that before. In the next year, we will be doing an economic development strategic plan. We have the RFP that went out. We're analyzing the finalists right now. And, you know, our first economic development strategic plan that was done in 2015 has concluded its 5-year span. It's time to do it again. There are considerations for COVID, trying to look at, you know, what is the best course forward. So I think there's two main goals, I guess, we would say, for economic development department. One is coming up with an action plan for economic development strategic plan. We know all of the different opportunities we have, but which ones do we do in what order, and where do we invest some of our resources? And then 2, I think we will be continuing to work through COVID related funds, and what I would call recovery dollars. So I believe we will be continuing to spend a lot of time in that space. And so how do we continue to be efficient in receiving funds and getting them out to people who can use them, or organizations that can help us use them in the best way? So those are kind of top on my list. And then followed by getting back out there and meeting with people in person. And, you know, that's where I get a lot of my understanding of what's needed, is being able to be out there talking to people and guiding them through the process of working with city government, and responding to their needs.
Excellent. And as far as you talked a little bit about recovery, what do you kind of envision for downtown's recovery? Maybe not only in the next year, but in the next several years. Do you have a kind of vision?
Well, I think it's really interesting because we oversee economic development and housing. There's two personally, I feel like economic development, there's been a lot of shifts in, you know, there was already for the city of Stockton a shift happening with e-commerce and those types of businesses that are coming in from a warehousing standpoint. That's accelerated with COVID. So we're seeing a lot of different shifts in the types of businesses that have been reaching out to Stockton. Not as much in the downtown area. I think retail is still waiting and seeing. I think some retail who have been able to shift some of their business online or pickup have been okay-ish. I mean, everyone's kind of been impacted. So in terms of recovery, you know, it's an up and down. Some days I think, okay, everything's going to be fine. We're on a great track. Other days I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to go on forever. So I think jury's still out. But 2 things on housing is there's a huge I feel like we're running towards a cliff on housing. We've been running towards a cliff on housing, but that's also accelerated in the sense that we've seen, and UOP Thomas has mentioned this before, the inbound migration to San Joaquin County has skyrocketed. So, and vacancy rates are dropping, which means it's going to be harder to keep people in their homes. It's going to be harder to find homes for our homeless folks. It's going to be harder for those who are just now hanging on and staying in their homes to continue to stay in their homes. The cost is rising. So that's something we're really concerned about. What that will do to the market, though, will spur building, right? Because a lot of the reasons we don't have the housing being built is because the price point isn't there where a developer would want it. So there is this balance that we're seeing, that we want to make sure people can stay housed, but we also want people building homes. And all of that will help drive the economic development recovery. And I would also say for our small businesses, making sure that they have access to resources and can be as strong as possible is going to be essential for the recovery piece. But on the flip side, I'm hearing people are having a hard time finding people to hire. So it's been up and down, and I think it'll continue to be that way for quite some time. We were always headed towards a recession at this time. It was being predicted all over the place last January in 2020. Nobody could have predicted what happened, but with this recession, a lot of aid and funding came in to help mitigate the impacts. So hopefully with Stockton being high on the rankings of fiscally healthy, high on the rankings of being, prime location for logistics, high on the rankings for being, a place that people want to live in terms of value to home. Hopefully all of those things are going to combine to make sure our recovery is quicker than as quick as possible.
Yes, I certainly hope so. Maybe ups and downs and hopefully upward trajectory after that.
Yeah, the ups and downs, just to be clear, the ups and downs are my ups and downs personally of how I view it, not necessarily what the economy is going to do.
Oh, yes, definitely. So you said just now that it's important for businesses to know about resources and be able to access resources. So I just have kind of two questions around that. The first one is, what resources can you recommend for businesses? Maybe not necessarily in your department only, but just in general. And then similarly, what resources can you recommend for developers or people who maybe they have their property, they're kind of considering, maybe now I want to do something with it. Do you have resources for those two groups?
Sure. So I think the best place to direct everyone is Advantage Stockton in terms of whether you're a small business looking to get a little bit of support, or you're a developer that has a big project. That's a good starting point. If you don't know where to start once you land at Advantage Stockton, two things. You can always send us an inquiry through the economic development at stocktonca.gov, because that will get you to the right staff person in terms of what you're looking for, anything from real property to a developer wanting to understand zoning, which they could always go to community development as well. Small businesses that are looking for grants. But I would also say that there is quite a support group of organizations within Stockton. And one of the things that I think we're realizing is that that's not always very clear how to access the tools. So, this small business development center is kind of the first stop shop that I think a lot of people don't always take advantage of. And that's a really great resource. If you're a business and you don't belong to a chamber, I think that puts you at a disadvantage. That's a great place to network, a great place to find resources. If you're not getting a newsletter from us, that puts you at a disadvantage, because that provides a lot of information about upcoming items. And then I think if you're located in downtown Stockton or the Miracle Mile and you're not connected and know the staff of those organizations, then you're also at a disadvantage. So to me, it's always about staying connected. And if you're sitting at home or you're sitting in your business and you're not reaching out, then I think that's the first step. We also need to reach out and try and find you as well, but it's going to take both groups working together to find the connections and get the resources where they need to go.
Definitely. Awesome. So I have just 2 more questions, and then we'll open it up to anyone who typed in a question. So is there anything else that you think people should know, either about your department or just resources in general?
One of the things that we talked about a little bit, we touched on it, is homelessness. And so here's what I would say in general is there's resources available for businesses, but there's also, in my mind, the sign of a healthy community is those that engage with government and organizations. So if there are people listening that are very interested in participating and helping drive a conversation around what the community needs, I would encourage them to participate in a couple of different capacities. One, you can always come to the Continuum of Care membership meetings on homelessness if that's a particular passion, or frankly, an irritation as well. At least you'll have the resource to find out what's going on with homelessness, and it's countywide, but city participates heavily on that. I would also say to look at the city clerk's information on the city's website and think about reaching out and participating on a board and commission and getting involved that way. And then even all of the chamber leaderships, Leadership Stockton, Downtown Stockton Alliance, there's, I'm sure there's volunteer positions that would help you stay informed. And then finally, Stockton is embarking on a beautification project and always looking for volunteers. You can find that on our homepage. So what I would say is get involved, get involved, get involved, get involved. And it's always amazing what kind of resources come out of that and understanding comes out of that. And we really want you to be involved because we really want the feedback and the information.
Amazing. So there are lots of ways people can make their feedback known or just get involved and be active in solving some problems that they're having maybe with their business or as a Stockton resident. And so the last question I have for you is, how can people get in touch with you if they have further questions for you or just about economic development department?
Sure. Well, the easiest way, you can always give me a call here in the department, but my email address is Carrie, CARRIE .Wright, WRIGHT at stocktonca.gov. So that's Carrie.Wright at stocktonca.gov. If you're really looking to sit down with me and make an appointment, you'll have to talk to Susan Will. She controls my calendar. So that's Susan.Will, and she might be easier sometimes. So always feel free to reach out to me personally. If I don't know the answer, I'll try and connect you to someone who does. If you have a general question on programs, it might be faster for you to email the economic.development@stocktonca.gov because they'll go straight to the program manager that's relevant to you. And I want you to get the tools you need as soon as possible. But meet with anyone, would love to come out to your business. We're usually looking for places to go visit, barring COVID. And making sure, so please invite me to your business, invite me to your events. I try and say yes to everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks so much for answering all of my questions. I know that was a lot. You made it through. And now we're going to wait and see if we have any of your questions. I think right now at the moment, we don't have any in the comments. So if you do have a question and you're watching, now is the time to try to type it in. So I'll just give you a minute or so to do that. And in the meantime, I would like to remind everyone that this video is going to be uploaded to our YouTube channel, which is Downtown Stockton. And if you are watching us on Facebook Live, then you've already found us there. But we also have an Instagram where our handle is @Downtown Stockton. And we have a Twitter @Downtown STKN. And so let me check one more time if there are any questions. All right, so I don't see any. All right. I want to give a little time just in case people are.
Well, then let me fill the space for 1 second and
Yes,
just
please.
say thank you to Downtown Stockton Alliance for being such a great partner, always keeping downtown Stockton, at the forefront of people's minds and advocating for it. You guys do a great job, and I really appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, I think a lot of the collaboration that we've been able to have between your organization and our organization has been amazing for projects like Changhua Lane, for Bud Alley, for many things, but also for the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's really great that we're able to work with you guys. And you guys are so flexible and open to that. So awesome. Thank you, Carrie. Well, I don't see any questions. So I think at this time, I would like to say thank you. Thank you, Carrie, for being our guest today and for sharing a little bit about all of the great work that you guys are doing at the Economic Development Department. You guys are amazing. So please keep it up. We're happy to work with you. And I would like to thank the viewers. Thank you for watching today. I hope that you learned a lot about what the Economic Development Department does and the resources that are available to you as businesses, as residents, as property owners. So with that, I would like to say have a great day, everyone, and have a great day downtown. Thanks so much.
Thank you.